Hey guys, it's Archon. Welcome to Inferno Friday. Today I want to talk about a new forum post from Diablo player Mrmonstrosity, and then of course we'll do our weekly 50 million gold giveaway. So Mrmonstrosity has done a couple of exciting Diablo 3 posts. They're always really well thought up and talking about ideas that he would like to see be added to the game, but this one seems to have gotten more attention than any of his previous posts. It's a really long, detailed post, extremely well written. I had a lot of fun reading it. I think you should read it as well. There's a link in the description, but I just wanted to tell you guys about it, give you a little summary in case you don't have time to read it, and then give you my opinions on it. So it's been all over Diablo fans and Reddit, and pretty much all the Diablo community's been talking about it. It's pretty exciting, and it has to do with loot 2.0. He starts off his post talking about the rarity of items. He says that in Diablo 1 and 2, it was a lot more exciting to find one of those rare items, and that we need to make it so it's more exciting to find items in Diablo 3. And this is definitely one of the things that the developers have been talking about and working on, but he gives some of his ideas on how to do this. He mentions that once the itemization patch comes out, we'll have a lot more legendaries at max level, because of course all the lower level legendaries will also be available at level 60 at upgraded versions. And so he thinks that a lot of the really good legendaries should have really low drop rates. It should be really epic to find one of these awesome legendaries, and then some of the lower quality legendaries can have lower drop rates, which I think is a good idea. And he says because of the auction house, it needs to be even lower than it was in Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, because it should be pretty amazing to see someone with one of these legendary items, at least the ones with the highest drop chance. And I like that idea. I think all legendaries should be viable and should be better than the average rare, unlike how it is now. But there should be some legendaries, maybe a new tier, or maybe just some that are better quality. And he had this cool idea, which I really liked, for when a legendary drops, depending on how rare it was, it would have a different orange beam coming out. And he used the example of sparkles, where the really rare legendaries would have more sparkles. I guess you could use any graphic there, but I thought it was a cool idea, especially for new players when you don't know how good a legendary item is. You can just see how many sparkles there are, or whatever the graphic is. So cool idea there. I like that. He then mentioned the example that Travis Day gave, comparing items in D3 to the feeling of getting a Thunder Fury in World of Warcraft. If you don't play World of Warcraft, Thunder Fury is a legendary item that's incredibly hard to get. You have to get lucky, but you also have to work really hard, and it's so rare that people get it that it's a really big deal just to see someone with it. And we don't really have that feeling in D3, and Mrmonstrosity says that we should, and I agree with that. I hope that they do add legendaries that are incredibly hard to get, that take some amount of luck and work, and are to the point where you see a player with that, like in a public game, and you're like, oh my god, I can't believe you got that item. So I hope they add that as well. He goes on to the next section. He calls it Rewarding the Hunt. I really like some of this stuff. His first section is called Recognition for Discovery, and he introduces this idea of an achievement-like system for identifying different items. You would have to find the item and identify it yourself, but then it would give you a bonus to other items of the same type. And I really like this because I'm not a big fan of achievements. I think Mrmonstrosity likes that achievements and lore a little bit more than I do, but this would make achievements pretty exciting if it actually gave you a bonus to that weapon type. He then mentions this idea of adding some kind of lore about each legendary to the in-game journal. I'm sure people who appreciate lore would really like that feature, just being able to read about whatever legendary you just found. And after that, he gets into Magic Find, and his Magic Find section really made me think a bit. He quotes Travis Day here, saying that they're thinking about making the Paragon system account wide, so that you don't have to start over with your Magic Find and Gold Find every time you decide to Paragon level a new character. And I kind of agreed with that. I think that's a good idea, because it does suck to be reset back to 0% Magic Find. But he has a cool idea here, and I just want to quote his post. He says, "Why don't we remove Magic Find from items and Paragon levels? Wow, do you feel that? That's called freedom. The freedom to play any character you want now and not have to sacrifice loot." And I really like that idea of completely getting rid of Magic Find from items and Paragon levels. I think there are probably a lot of people who like the Magic Find stat still, but Paragon levels does do a lot to get rid of it. And shortly before introducing the Paragon system, Blizzard did say they eventually want to completely remove Magic Find from gear, so maybe we'll see that in the itemization patch. I definitely wouldn't mind the change. Mrmonstrosity then talks about some changes he'd like to see made to the Nephilim Valor and Monster Power system, and I think some of them are good, but I don't agree with all of them. He says he wants to remove the Nephilim Valor cap to cap Magic Find at 500% and then award more Magic Find per stack on higher MPs. So, for example, on MP1, each stack would give you 1%, so you would need 500 NV stacks to get to 500% Magic Find. Of course, that would only be possible if you could travel through multiple acts, and then MP10, you'd only need 50 stacks because it would give you 10%. I think there's some benefit to that system. However, I think it's just too penalizing on casual players. The casual player isn't playing for hours on end, and so they're not going to hit that maximum Magic Find. I think that Nephilim Valor and Monster Power are fine how they are right now, but again, I really like the idea of getting rid of Magic Find on gear. He also mentions this idea of losing a stack of Nephilim Valor every time you die. I think that's pretty cool because I've been playing on hardcore a little bit recently, and I really like the heavy death penalty, although it kind of sucks losing your character. So having a little bit of that death penalty added to softcore, I think would add a lot more excitement to the game. But I don't know if casual players would feel the same way. A lot of people don't like heavy death penalties, so I think that could go either way, but a cool idea. After that, he has a section on crafting. I thought he had a lot of really cool ideas here. He first mentions brimstones and making them more exciting by lowering the chance to get a brimstone when you salvage a legendary, since we've already increased the drop chance of legendaries, and then having different types of brimstones based on the legendary that you salvage. I thought that was a really cool idea, but he goes on to talk about what I thought was a much cooler idea, which was this idea of legendary crafting materials. He said have craftable legendaries that are really epic. I would hope better than what you could get on the auction house, but make them require bind on account crafting materials that you get from purple monsters. What an awesome way to make these unique purple monsters more exciting to find and kill. He said buff them up so they're about as strong as key wardens, make them spawn in random locations throughout the world so you can't just farm the same area over and over again to kill them and get your mats, and then make them drop these legendary crafting materials that you would need to craft legendary awesome items. He then mentioned an idea that's been thrown around on the forums a little bit of adding tabs to your inventory to hold different types of items. So when you pick up an item or acquire an item, it automatically gets sorted into one of the tabs. I think this is a great idea. I hope Blizzard adds something like this. I understand that inventory management is an important part of online RPGs, but make it a little bit easier for us, I think. I think it's okay if our main inventory tab is just for the stuff we're picking up, like armor and weapons. This would make it a lot easier. So I like that idea. He also thinks we should get rid of some of the gem levels. I don't think that's necessary, but I don't think it would hurt the game either, but he kind of explains why he likes that idea. And then he talks about the Mystic. They've all but announced that the Mystic is going to be in the game by the time we get the expansion, and that the Mystic will be used to modify or upgrade your items. And I think that Mrmonstrosity has a good idea for how the Mystic should work. He says the Mystic shouldn't be able to re-roll the stats on your item. He says because then you would just find one good item and keep re-rolling it until it was the item you wanted, and then you wouldn't need to find any more items. And I think that's a really good point. I agree with him there. He thinks that the Mystic should just be used to upgrade the stats that are already on your item. I think either that or make it so the Mystic can add one random affix to your item one time. But I actually prefer Mrmonstrosity's idea here. And it also makes a very good gold sink, as he points out. It would cost a lot of gold, as well as some of these bind on account mats that he was talking about before, and you could upgrade the affixes on any of your legendary items to make them better. I also think it would be nice if you could only do this to items you found yourself. So you wouldn't just go to the auction house, buy the best item, and then upgrade it to where you wanted it to be. You would actually have to farm for the items, but some people disagree with me there. I think you could have a good argument either way. And then in his last section, Mrmonstrosity talks about legendary items, and he has some really cool ideas here that I hadn't heard before. Travis Day has already mentioned that they want to add legendary items that really change how you play your character and add new builds. But Mrmonstrosity had a nice little addition to that idea. He likes the idea of having new legendaries in the game which would unlock a new skill rune for a certain skill. And he gives the example here of a legendary he created that would change Whirlwind into an ice storm that would shoot out projectiles. But he says you might not want to use the rune that legendary unlocks, so he thinks that they should add an additional rune slot that would only be activated by having a weapon that activated that rune slot. That way, if you wanted to, you could change to one of the other runes, or you could use the one that comes with that legendary. I thought that was a really cool idea, especially if they don't plan on adding new skill runes in the expansion. He then makes a point that's very similar to a point point that I made in a recent YouTube video called How to Fix the Demon Hunter that has to do with viable builds. If they made new builds that required some of these legendaries to unlock new skill runes, then you could make these builds more powerful, more exciting, or even take some of the overpowered builds now and have them require these new skill runes that come from legendaries, and then they would actually be hard to obtain. There wouldn't be these cookie cutter builds that everyone used right when they hit level 60. There would actually be something to work towards, and you would actually be proud and excited once you finally got that legendary that allowed you to unlock a certain build. And maybe some of the more overpowered builds would require even 2 or 3 of these legendaries to get the right skill rune combination. It would really give you something to work for in the game. You wouldn't have the OP build right when you hit level 60. So I was really glad that he made that point, because I feel very similar on that aspect. And then at the end of his post, he shows off a few more legendary items that he came up with, and I really liked this one here. It's a legendary belt with a passive called Brawler, where damage would be increased by an additional 3% for every enemy within pickup radius. Really cool idea, because it would make a stat like pickup radius more viable. And he says that's just an example of how you could take some of these affixes that aren't very valuable right now and make them more valuable. He mentions that it might be too hard to make these affixes valuable for everyone, but you could at least make them valuable for a certain group of people, so they would at least be sought after on the auction house. So I thought that was a cool idea. Overall, it was just a really awesome post with a lot of good ideas. It was really well written, and it got some attention from Blizzard too, which is really cool. So thank you, Mrmonstrosity. I really enjoyed reading it. I think you guys will too, so there's a link in the description. Also, Diablo fans did an interview with Mrmonstrosity. If you're interested in that, I'll put a link in the description as well. You're just asking him about how he comes up with these posts, how much time he spends on them, that kind of stuff. I thought it was a pretty good read, so you can read that if you want to. Before I end the video, let's do our weekly 50 million gold giveaway. Each week, I pick one random comment below, and that person wins 50 million gold on EU or US. Last week's winner was Minero. He said good prediction, so congratulations, Minero. If you guys win the 50 million gold, all you have to do is come on over to Twitch. There's a link in the description. Get a hold of me there on the Twitch chat or through a message. I'll have you prove it's you on YouTube, and I'll get you your 50 million gold. So thank you guys for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please hit that subscribe button if you did, and I'll have another one for you soon.